Kela Sweet 16 streaming across all music platforms now. Featuring 16s from Tina Kamau, Orifice Volgatron, Foreign Beggars, Marga, Bob Villain, Illerman, and Trigger. The sounds of Killa Sweet 16s streaming now.
AG Dentistry. In my line of work, not only does what I do with the mouth get reviewed, it's also my instrument. And it's beyond important to me that my teeth get the professional service they deserve. The AG family provide expert dentistry, whether it's NHS or cosmetic. They're the finest in London. Head over to agdentistry.co.uk for more information on treatments and prices. AG Dentistry.
This is the sound of the Killa Beatbox Body Part Sample Pack. Over 120 loops, samples, and one-shots for your music production. Exclusively on Splice.
Killa podcast. KillaOfficial.com.
Beatbox created.
Killa.
And we're here to talk about world music and street culture.
Killa podcast.
Yeah, let's jump into this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Killa podcast. Not one, not two, but three. We're here, live and direct. Kensal Rise, Central London, or central as you need to be. The podcast with the most. And don't forget to subscribe and all that business. Okay, it's a special one. This one's an important one. This is one that we wanted to flag. Remember my boy Rankin inside the place?
Afternoon.
Afternoon, the doggy, the man with a plan. This was his idea, and I think it's an awesome one because I think it'll shed some light on what some of you might be going through in mental health. And alongside us, we have my boy from Dot, Matt Cantor, Freestylers. I can say Strike too, can't I?
Yeah, you can say whatever you like.
You know, producer, in the breakbeat and dance world, both of them holding it down. And there's me, of course, that will be monitoring the minutes.
Right, yeah. You get one of those weird machines they use in courtrooms for typing really quickly.
Yeah, right. Get the countdown clock and all that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so you guys all right then, yeah?
Yeah, it's nice to try and use our power for good instead of evil for a change.
Yeah, seducing people on the dance floor.
Oh, yeah, and just, making dubstep and that sort of thing is... is now considered evil, and we've affected so many lives in a negative way. And I jest.
Isn't it the way though? Often like when you're a musician or an artist, there's this constant need of offering, but in a weird way, podcasts seem to have like more of a give. It's more of a gift. You're not asking for something in return, like money. You know what I mean? You're kind of like doing it for the good of all.
You're putting something out into the universe.
That's right.
Yeah.
The podcast format is, I think, going to be one of the most important formats of the last, I don't know, maybe 100 years. At least I think it's going to do more good than I think television will do, because, you take a 2 or 3 hour long conversation of two people really, really getting deep into stuff and really untangling a complicated mess of a subject that you could never do in a 10-minute, 5-minute television soundbite. Like if you've got a late night talk show or even a 20-minute long documentary or something, you can only go so far with it, and it has to be made exactly for television to all these different specifications and, under all these different regulations and so on, whereas a podcast is completely free and open, an open platform to do exactly what you want with. And if you get bogged down for an hour and a half going down a rabbit hole that doesn't lead anywhere, it doesn't matter. And if it takes a meandering 2 hours to get to a really important point, so be it. And it's often like the journey as much as the destination with a podcast that really, is the value.
Yeah, man. You listen to
I do listen to quite a few podcasts, actually. I'm a bit of an insomniac, so I sort of use them to help me sleep. But if they're really interesting, they sort of keep me up, so they're counterproductive. I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, actually. Yeah.
I mean, one of the key reasons why we wanted to get you in on the conversation was because of the journey you've taken in therapy. Because I remember, we've hung out too much, and for your own health, brother.
Down in Fitness First, the local Fitness first. Yeah.
Spotting each other.
Yeah. Spotting weaknesses often.
Seeing who can lift the least.
Yeah, exactly. Who can try and bend and stuff like that. But you went on a path, and I remember you saying you felt I'm paraphrasing, but I think I'm right in saying that you had an idea to want to look out for artists and kind of what makes them tick and where the stumbling blocks are mentally within the confines of the head when you're in the studio, you know, in live, and you know, you wanted to get into that, didn't you?
Well, I guess. I mean, yeah, I was. You know, I've been in the music industry for about 25 years or so, and when I got to my mid-30s, I sort of was probably a bit less enamoured with the lifestyle, and hit a bit of a brick wall. Had a bit of therapy myself, which I got a lot out of, and actually, psychotherapy has been in my background for a long time. My mum used to work at the Institute of Psychoanalysis when I was when I was a kid. I used to sort of help out their Christmas parties and hang the coats of lots of sorts of eccentric old psychoanalysts. And my godmother was a psychotherapist. Actually, it was. And there were always books about, you know, therapy around the house. It was always something I was aware of. You know, when I hit some relationship difficulties in my early 20s, my mum was like, "Why don't you go down to the Tavistock Centre and go and see a couples counsellor?" And you know, I mean, this was just with a girlfriend. So, you know, and so I do love music, and you know, and I was still loving music and enjoying the gigs, but I just sort of wanted to try something different and just try and go down a bit of a different road. So I started off just doing voluntary work at funny enough, the primary school that I went to, which is just around the corner from here. They've got a place called Salisbury World, which is a after school club for kids from a refugee background. So I just started doing voluntary work there, and I just got a lot out of it, and it was just nice to sort of get out of the music and, you know, and do something, I guess, altruistic, you know. And it was just from there really, and then I, you know, just started training and did a 5-year training, and have been a qualified psychotherapist for about 3 years now. So I've been in private practice, but as far as the music, it's been nice because I think with my background in music, it helps. I mean, I think being a psychotherapist, it's still important to use your creativity, and I tend to get a fair few clients coming from the music industry, or from, you know, or actors as well. So,
wow.
And I think just, you know, me having that background, I guess they already know that I have a sort of a fair amount of understanding about that world. Yeah.
What are you saying on that in terms of like what we was talking about on the phone? You know, wanting to kind of get into it and like, I know a guy.
I know, it's quite the coincidence, really. Like, because you got recommended to me by our mutual friend Akira the Don.
Yeah.
And then you were like, oh, I know a guy who might be slightly woke on this topic.
The pressure.
Yeah.
You've got to drop some serious knowledge.
Oh,
in
right.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dropping some serious.
Yeah.
But so just for the people, you know, just bring up to speed. Where did this come from? Why did you want to?
So I have, you know, on off with music, had very much peaks and troughs with, you know, my own journey through it, struggles here and there, fairly significant ones. This year, I very nearly stepped away from music completely. I was looking at training to be a PT. Almost started a meat box service. I had like all sorts of wild ideas. I, you know, considered going to. I'd never been to university, so I considered, I don't know, maybe I need to go back and learn something. I don't know whether or not I really would gel with traditional education structures. I think I would get frustrated by
What was the
constraints.
Sorry, do you mind me asking? What was the trigger point? You know, what sort of got you to that point where you thought, okay, maybe I need to try something different?
Really had stopped enjoying making music.
Right.
And I largely have, I think, a lot of feelings of not being able to keep up with everyone else in the scene. Like, particularly, like drum and bass demands such a high standard of music production, now more than ever. And I've sort of over the course of the year come to terms with the fact that my music doesn't need to be the tightest, most sonically perfect, hard neurofunk rollers. Like that, actually, my skills lie in a different area of creating the more character, like, I don't know, somewhat irreverent records that the more that I've been known for over the years, and if I'm just trying to make noisier sound-alikes, it's a fool's errand. I'm never going to be able to make something that sounds like their thing, but that's not my job. That shouldn't be my area of it. So it's difficult. Like a lot of I think a lot of people feel a huge frustration with inability to promote their work properly. Like social media is just an absolute nightmare in terms of like, I've got 140,000 people on my Facebook page, but I put a post up with a YouTube link and it will reach 500 people unless I pay to promote it. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, how can I earn a living under those circumstances? Like, so I've got to, you've got to pay to promote every single element of it with the intention of then trying to get a booking that would hopefully cover the cost of all of this. And like, trying to solve the riddle of what exactly it is that gets you the bookings is so hard. Like, I've got a number 1 on Beatport. I've not got any bookings off the back of it. What does this mean? Is it attached to record sales? Is it like social media presence? Should I be posting more selfies? Should I be posting more in the studio things? Should I be doing this? And you've got to be every single member of what would normally be like an entire creative team and business. You've got to create the product, learn to create the product, create it, then market it, and then be the sales, be the whole team behind every aspect of it. And not everyone can do every part of that well enough to actually...
And be creative as well.
Yeah, and be constantly creative as well. Battle your own inner demons of, is this really what I want to be making? Is this what I think people want me to make? Is this what's going to get me bookings? Is this what's going to... Why am I even still doing this? This is such a precarious, weird existence. Am I only doing this because I feel like I would be ashamed if I walked away and people would say, oh, didn't you used to be High Rankin or whatever?
So you're talking about how much your self-esteem is sort of tied into your music persona?
Yeah, 100%. And like, so then, if I stopped, do I then stop posting on all of these social media platforms that I have? Like, do I close them down? Do I sell all my equipment? Do I go into another creative industry? Do I go into... there are a lot of conflicting things that fly around. Eventually, I wrote down on a big bit of paper, what is it that I'm doing that I enjoy and it's actually making me happy. And the only thing, music-wise, was I was doing a weekly live stream playing old drum and bass vinyl and... telling stories about old records and old raves and all that stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that's great. I've seen.
Oh, thanks. And that was just like so much fun, and also like nostalgia is such a powerful emotion, and it's a weird one because it's neither happy nor sad. It's some sort of strange emotion that's sort of almost out on its own.
It's a bit melancholy.
It is a bit, but then it also conjures up happiness at the same time. It's a peculiar one, but it's a super powerful. Component. And I was like, okay, well, what if I did it every day? I was like, okay, well, that's not going to quite have the novelty factor every day. But then also at the same time, the videos kept getting pulled off of Facebook because they have algorithms that spot music and that's not your own and they just pull it. It was super annoying. So I was like, I need to try and solve that problem as well. And ended up, like, it all sort of collated in me starting an online radio station called Threshold.fm, promo.
Yeah, man.
And which is really easy to do. There's just websites that basically put it all together for you and you can upload a load of music and it'll jukebox it while you're not streaming live. And I was like, okay, well, how shall I get it going?
That's good. That's sick.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's you would think it would be really difficult and complicated. It's not. It's super easy. Anyone can do it.
That's amazing.
But they shouldn't. They should just listen to mine.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then I thought, how am I going to get it going? I'll just do I'll do the breakfast show every morning for an hour. And I've been doing that for nearly 2 months. And off the back of that, it has started to build up a community of people that listen every morning. They've nicknamed themselves the Lobster Crew because I've got...
Wow, you've got your own crew already. That's really good.
I've got a soundboard of loads of ridiculous things. And one of them is a sample of Jordan Peterson saying lobsters and just use it for comedic effect. And it's sort of off the back of that, it's sort of... And then that really got me thinking about everything that had sort of gone through over the course of the year and what it is that is lacking in so many musicians and producers and DJs' lives and why so many people are dropping out of the industry in the way that they are. one of the things is undoubtedly a lack of community. Like I've seen articles like, "Oh, we need to talk about mental health in the dance music community." And it's like, it isn't a community. It's like we don't all go for lunch. We don't all meet up on a Sunday to play football. It's a load of people in their rooms on their own, often with no windows, making music in a precarious hierarchy. It isn't a community, and that's a large part of the problem. And it's like, how do we build our own little self-sustaining communities that give us, that sort of emotional and social nourishment that gets you through the day?
Yeah, I guess in a way it's not like a 9 to 5 where you go to work and you get you have workmates and you make friendships and you have relationships. As you say, it's often one person working in the studio all day, or occasionally there's duos, but that can become like a bad marriage.
Yeah.
But I mean there is I think it's quite an isolated existence. And then if you add to that weekends travelling, being in hotel rooms, jet lag,
late nights and all that. Just
late nights, drugs, drink. It's a sort of heady mix for.
It's the perfect storm, really.
Yeah.
You just send someone a bit bit bonkers.
Yeah.
You know what's mad is doing these podcasts and having various guests of all different walks in music. One thing that I notice is the most interesting conversations are off camera. When you're sitting there after, people have had time to have open communications with the camera on, but then as soon as it's off, that's when the real conversation, I always find the honesty comes out that maybe they wouldn't want to say on a podcast. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, I'm not going to throw names out, but it doesn't matter who you are on the pecking order. The amount of conversations I have which mirror exactly the same as the other guy that ain't so big, or one is really, it's within the industry where they're like, oh, I don't know what to do, my agent's doing XYZ, or I think I need to change my manager, or I think I might have to move house, or I think I might have to stop working with my guy, There's a lot of that conversation, and it's such a common trait. So there is certainly a call for this kind of thing. It isn't a community thing. There, like you say, there isn't a community. I don't think people would have opened up to me if I didn't invite them to a podcast and they were talking initially. I don't think they would have a conversation amongst people.
I think people tend to be quite guarded, I guess, especially in dance music. This idea of it being a community maybe is a bit unrealistic, because there is that sort of element of competition, especially in the same scene. Who's getting the best gigs, and there's all that sort of what I call flyer anxiety. Who's headlining, and I know names, and people have sort of phoned their agent. Why is so and so above me, and so I guess it shows how fundamentally insecure we all are, really. But there's something about the sort of people needing validation from their careers for how well they're doing. So and it's a bit of a false economy, if how good you feel about yourself depends on how many gigs you're getting, what your fees are, where you are on the fly, you're setting yourself up for something, because no one stays on top.
Well, that's it, and everything's completely relative as well. Like the studies that have been done, where it's like, would you like to earn £50,000 and all your friends earn £25,000, or would you like to earn £100,000 but all your friends earn £200,000? Like the skew of people saying that they would like to earn £50,000 but being twice as much as their friends, it's like 80 or 90%. It's the
tribal pecking orders.
Yeah.
I know, this is the thing. And so you've got this industry which is there's you're climbing up charts, you're climbing up positions on flyers, you're climbing up this hierarchy, but it's the hierarchy isn't in itself bad as long as it's based on competency and it's not corrupt. But the problem is that this game, this music industry game that we're all playing, there's no clearly defined set of rules to get up there. It's not like, say, I don't know if I'm not 100% sure how things work in a hospital, but presumably you need to get additional qualification to move up the ladder until you become the best surgeon there is, or whatever. It's like, well, you pass this, you study and you pass this test, and then you get it. Or say like the military, for example, there's a very, very clear route up the hierarchy that has rigid sets of rules and requirements. The music industry has none of that. It's like, you don't know how much other people are gaming the system with fake social media stats, where it's, and it is who you know rather than what you know. And there's so much of that at play that it's so temperamental, and you not knowing necessarily where your next paycheck is coming from. And particularly when, you get to your mid-30s, people are getting married, people are having kids, and like the idea of having a temperamental income when you have children. And also at this point, stuff has become... when you first get into music and you first develop the ability to create music, like this idea of... people talk about the logos, which is, from the biblical stories of the being that creates order out of chaos. This is what you're doing in the fundamental beginnings of music. You're creating something out of nothing. And that's unbelievably exciting, and it's fascinating, and it really draws you in. Once you get beyond that point of understanding how it works enough for it to be enjoyable, but not so much so as that you've sort of seen it all and you're stuck in a rigid way of working. So you're creating order out of chaos, and it's all exciting and it's amazing. And that can go on for years until you then develop these more, entrenched working habits, and then it becomes more like a job. And everyone said, like, all your fans sort of say, like, oh, why don't you make that tune again and that tune again? And you're like, oh, I can't just make the same thing over again. And then you make something different. They go, why have you made something so different? And you're like, I can't quite win here.
It's interesting though, the thinking about the creativity. I sometimes think the further you get sort of down your career, the more contrived your music making can get. So
totally.
often that's why the sort of earlier stuff has a certain something. There's a certain sort of naivety about it, or you're being a bit more free with the way you're producing, and then there is this sort of you do sometimes get this sort of pressure to chase your tail a little bit.
But also, I think like things like there's an impression that people feel like you should be more successful. When you hit 10,000, you did 10,000 hours, and you're really good at what you're doing, but yet, like you say, there's peaks and there's troughs, and sometimes there's those lows, and you're like, well, I'm doing everything I can. And then you get pressure from the family, you get pressure from your friends. When you're going to get a real job, conversations start coming up when you're on your lows. But then when you're high and they're singing, it's like, do you know what I mean? There's a constant mental like tug of war. Yeah. Not just with your own perceived ideas, but other people's perceptions too.
But there's also, thinking about, the creative side of things, there's something about creating something and offering it out to the people, and then how that's received and how that affects, how you feel about yourself. I remember doing an album, and there's a whole process of making an album. There's all that excitement, and it takes months, and you get a track finished, and you keep playing it over and over again. You play it to your mates, and they all like it because they're your mates, And play it to your mum. She doesn't quite get it, but pretends to like it.
That always works. That's a good sign.
As long as she doesn't get it, I generally am all right.
But the fact, then you play it to that, I don't know, maybe your manager or a record company person, and they're not feeling it, and just that feeling, all this, this thing you've created, all this time and all this sort of love you've put into something, just it wasn't as good as the last album. I can't quite see what market we're going to go for with this, and I would literally feel flat for weeks. It could just really take the wind out of my sails and it's just so you're sort of balancing sort of creativity and that whole thing of making something and worrying how that will be received, with trying to make a living, with the practicalities of earning a living and not knowing what you're going to be earning month to month or year to year. So there's a lot of unknowns, and there's also putting your heart on the line a little bit as well. And also every DJ gig is a bit like putting your heart on the line. If you I think any DJ that says when they turn up and see an empty dance floor, they don't feel that sort of pit in their stomach. That's as
what am I doing in life?
I call them partridge gigs. Alan on the decks having sort of flashbacks of the rave days.
Totally.
Some blue nun in there somewhere.
But you know what's mad is like even some of the people that you think, I don't know, like the dead mouses of the world, where you're like, well, you've got an income, you've got things popping off. You can always jump back on the horse, and because there's a scene waiting for you. But even in to that degree of artistry, they're dropping out.
My thoughts are that once you're that far in, that the creative experience of making music in and of itself has sort of dried up, you're left with just a real lack of meaning, and it's then you're just like you start to feel like a cog in a production line or whatever, and it's and then the whole reason for doing it in the first place is sort of lost, and a lack of a sense of meaning in your life is just a one-way ticket to hell, really.
Yeah, man.
But I would imagine there's more pressure. The guys sort of higher up the ladder, they're turning down bigger fees. They're probably getting more pressure from agents and being threatened of being sued, or so I guess that with more success becomes more pressure.
100%.
Yeah, it just gets more and more. It stacks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's also like when you start talking about this stuff and you start trying to explain to someone how like being a producer and being a DJ is not quite as amazing as it seems, you feel like such an idiot. Like it feels so ridiculous. Like, hold on, you get paid how much? You go and play some records in front of people. It's like, well, there's a little bit more to it than that. It's not just the getting paid for that 1 hour. It's the 15 years of mastering the craft before it. But like, it's a strange thing. It's a sort of perfect storm, really, for making yourself unwell when you spend 90% of your waking hours in a room on your own with no windows. You don't eat properly, you keep weird hours, you don't sleep properly, eat crap food, don't work out, don't see very many people, and then go and travel. Like, traveling in and of itself is enormously tiring. It's that has its own stresses, and then arrive somewhere, go and sit in a hotel until 3 o'clock in the morning, where you get driven into like the belly of the beast for an hour and a half, and you're the centre of attention to 1,000 people, and you then have to like switch on performance mode and all of this, or you get really drunk before, and then half an hour later you're back in your hotel room on your own,
and you're expected to be able to sleep after that, just to be able to switch off,
and then you get picked up at 7 a.m. to be driven back to the airport.
6 hour wait from EasyJet in
exactly,
small cubicle of an airport.
Get jammed into an airplane seat. And try and repeat that for 15 years and see, see where it gets you.
Some people are militant though. Like, I always admire the people that just kind of get on. You know what I mean? Just but then I think what you were saying earlier, the whole idea of like you've got to accept that the highs and lows and what it is. This is the hardest bit, isn't it? It's just trying to find the control within what you're doing, and because it's so lawless, you don't really have the opportunity to do that. So I always admire people.
I mean, I think just something that's just come up for me as you're talking about this. I think what's really important with mental health is routine and structure. So that's why when with little kids, they really need routine. They need to know when their bath time is, when bedtime is, food. It gives us a frame to develop in, if you like. And if you think about the DJ world, there's very little structure. There's very little routine. It's a sort of open plane. I guess there's sort of going to the studio. But that's a sort of self-imposed routine, and you need to be quite disciplined if you're going to get yourself there every morning. And then you're DJing and you're traveling and gigs can come in last minute and everything can be thrown up in the air, and having a family, you can't just sort of drop everything if a gig comes in and you've got to go off to the States in 3 weeks and
you've got a baby and
it doesn't. I always think DJing's a dream job in your 20s, and it stays and it's still great into your 30s, and gradually as you're sort of becoming old enough to be everyone's dad. It slightly loses its shine. And
it's funny you say that, because the whole kind of backstage scenario, and when you are the elder statesman in the backstage room, that does play in your mind. And I wonder how many of those under 28s actually do practice discipline. I remember when I was 27, 28, the last thing I was thinking was a to-do list. It's like... But no, now we're older, it's like, well, actually, if I really want to make my 50-year-old proud, I'm going to have to start doing this right now. You know what I mean? It's a very precarious place, isn't it?
I also think that people underestimate how quickly they can burn out from stuff as well, like from where stuff seems to be fine, and then you can switch in a matter of months and suddenly you're absolutely at the end of your tether and you don't know what to do about it. And there's a lot of shame in the idea of being forced into getting a quote unquote normal job. Like, oh shit, there just aren't enough gigs this month. Am I going to go on the dole?
Yeah.
Am I, what am I going to do here? Like, this is, or like people are, going back to working call centres or whatever. And like the idea of that for a lot of people is absolutely terrifying. And that's something that sort of, over the last few years, I've thought about a lot and really thought about it's ridiculous when you think about it that there should be some sort of shame into doing a low level job, and I've sort of managed to completely strip that away now. Like if I did stop and I went back and washed dishes in the kitchen, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not above any other job. I'll go and I'll wash the dishes and I'll do them well, and then I'll climb up the ranks of the restaurant or whatever industry I decide to go into if that's what is required to get, to pay bills and to, when I have a family to support the family, like it has to be done. But like,
it shows strength of character to me.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think that there's a significant ego within music that
100%.
you're somehow above doing other jobs.
100%.
And if you can let go of that, that's a freeing feeling.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
and I was trying to think of like, okay, well, look, so there's some obvious things like eat properly, keep regular hours, try and get proper amounts of sleep, and look after your physical health. These are obvious things that it's easier said than done to do them all, but that's a good roadmap for getting yourself into as good a shape as is required to then deal with the more psychological aspects of it, like feeling like there's a lack of meaning, feeling like you no longer have an aim in the industry, because your first aim really when you get into it is to make enough money to live. So when you get to that point, okay, well, what's the next thing? It's like, oh, well, do you want to headline this festival? You want to get a release on that label? Like, and then what? Where do you we're not all going to be able to headline EDC or whatever. It's just not going to happen. So if you don't have any goals, you're goalless, and you don't have any aims, you're aimless. You have to have these aims for things to have meaning, and then so when you're doing it all on your own and you've got no community aspect to it, it's really tricky. So what I'm starting to think is that you can try your best to create your own community within your sphere of music.
That's right.
And you should, but also don't expect music to give you all the community that you need. Maybe you need to get that community from a sports team or some other thing we can go and be around other people that enjoy the same things as you do. This is what the secular atheist lot are lacking without religion. Like you would go to church every Sunday, you would go to church maybe a couple of times a week, and you would have that community element that we now don't have. So, and that's a toss up with weighed up against the freedoms of not being tied to a organised religion.
But perhaps I guess the music industry could be a mirror to people's mental state, so perhaps there are pathologies that may have come up anyway, and something about the music industry might accelerate those pathologies coming up, so because of the sort of instability of it. So some sort of work on people, working on yourself, working on your own mental state within the music industry, trying to, I guess, work on staying in the moment a little bit more. If you tend to sort of ruminate on thoughts or sort of catastrophize about the future all the time, maybe try some meditation, maybe try some therapy, try some practices so that you can learn just to maybe appreciate and enjoy what's happening in front of you. So if you're at a gig, enjoy that tune, enjoy the crowd, enjoy being in the moment, rather than sort of worrying about what's happening next week or worrying about where you are on the fly. So there's secular spirituality, isn't there? So, meditation and mindfulness and those kind of things. Right. So it may be just the way that you how you experience life,
Yeah.
might sort of affect your enjoyment of being in the music industry, which
Really
is
good point, yeah.
The other thing which I'm trying to do as much as possible now, which I'm getting better at doing, is don't be in the studio unless you're doing stuff that can only be done in the studio. Like, if you need to do admin work, go and do it in a nice cafe or a co-working space or somewhere around other people.
It's a really good idea.
Like, there's no reason to sit in a tiny room with no windows.
Yeah.
Unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And what about making music with other people? I guess that's more of it, that's that, you're in relationship with somebody and you're
Start a
exploring
drum and bass
music.
supergroup, why not? Come on, someone's got to.
It's quite vacuous when you put out your music. Just going back to what you were saying about the social media side of things, it's there is the echo chamber effect where you're putting it out, and a lot of people through the algorithms are seeing it. Oh, love it, love it, love it, love it. But in the reality, it's like, are you hitting the marker to get that gig? Are you hitting the marker to raise your profile that you for the reasons of why you put music out, what you intended it to do? That for me is like such a, speaking personally, that to me is a constant struggle in my head. I'm like, well, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. I mean, you can't stop me. I'm keeping going. Do you know what I mean? But then after a while, you kind of do look back, and it's that situation where it's like you only know how far you got until you stop. Do you know what I mean? Because at the point you're looking at it, it's like, well, is this making the noise that it appears to be making? And if it is, then where's the gig? Or where's the review? Where's the premiere? Where's the... Do you know what I mean? Where's the bells and whistles? I don't know. That's my...
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing for me is like, you make a record. If, let's say I make a record and I send it off to a label and I don't hear anything back, is that because they never listened to it or because they didn't like it? And it's not knowing which of those two it is, or I've released an EP and not got any gigs off the back of it. Is that because the EP fell short of the mark? Or because just... I get so many people who are like, oh, why haven't you released anything in ages? It's like, well, I've had like 3 or 4 EPs out in the last couple of years. I haven't seen any of those. Like, I posted about them. Like, they're just not, no one's finding out. And there's that whole side of it. And then there's also the ridiculousness of like, you post something like, I've just released these 4 records, 4 likes, here's a meme, 2,000 likes.
Drives me insane, dude.
What? Should I just be a meme account now? That's fine, but just let me know.
How can cats have dominated?
Oh God, cat on a keyboard. 10,000 likes.
I hate it.
Oh God, here's a selfie. 10 times the like of here's a piece of art I spent 2 weeks working on.
The internet's a funny place, though, isn't it? The whole sort of idea of trying to get validation through likes.
But that sort of comes back to the why'd you get into it in the first place thing. It's like, why did we get into this in the first place? Why did you get into this in the first place?
That's a good question.
It's a really good question.
I think with me, I kind of fell into it. I got my decks when I was 15. I used to make rudimental dance tracks in my bedroom, and music was an escape for me. I think I was, probably a bit of a geeky kid at school, but I always loved music. It was just something I was drawn to. From when I was 10 years old, playing Thriller incessantly and imagining that Michael Jackson was my best friend and he was coming to my school hall and body popping. It was always an escape, and it was. I think I got a buzz from making music and watching how that impacted people, and I guess I was lucky enough to make music that was successful enough for me to have a living in it for a fairly long time. And I still do love music. I think, I still love music taking me into the moment. Sometimes when the kids are screaming and driving me mad, I've now got an Alexa and I just shout like, Alexa, play The Message, Grandmaster Flash, or something I like, and just to get some music on, or, and it actually brings the kids into the moment. It might sort of stop them shouting at each other. It was music and the love of making music, being creative and watching that affect people. And I think what often happens with music careers is that sort of gets smaller and smaller, and some of those sort of status things can grow. It becomes more of a competitive thing. It's more about how big you can get, or as we were saying, what tent you're playing in, and I think you sort of lose perhaps that sort of original reason that got you into it in the first place. Just loving making music, that feeling when you've finished a tune and you want to play it again and again and again, and that sort of buzz of listening back to some music you made. I mean, I still walk out of a studio and get this certain high. I get this certain high when I've made something I'm a bit excited by. And it'll probably never come out now and it may never see the light of day, but it's almost worth it just for those few hours of feeling
It's an injection
excited.
of endorphin and like knowing that you've achieved something.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
So in that way, it's almost like doing it like that. It's almost like playing a game, because, like you say, you sit down and play a computer game for a couple of hours. You enjoy that couple of hours, but ultimately, at the end of playing a computer game, you haven't achieved anything in the world. But like, if you spend 2 hours making music, but even though no one hears that music, you do still have a product. See, there you go. You're referring to it as a product.
Yeah.
You do still have a piece of art, sort of at the end of it, which you can go back and listen to, even if you're the only one that ever listens to it, to sort of take enjoyment from it. And that's a weird thing in itself, like to create something a piece of art for yourself that you really enjoy looking at, just for you.
But even as you say that, I guess the truth is you want other people to hear it.
It's a bit then why do you want other people to hear it? Because you want that additional validation of other people, and because that feels good.
But then also, I guess your music can move other people, so then you're moving people with your art. And watching your art affect people is part of the enjoyment, and then it becomes more of a group activity.
That's right.
and less of a solo thing.
So interestingly, when we started, you said that going into psychotherapy was doing something altruistic, whereas making music in a way is altruistic, because people get enormous amounts of enjoyment from it. Like, I think of the records that I've listened to made by other people that I'm just so phenomenally glad that these records exist, because they have such a profound effect on me, and I know that I can always go back and listen to them. They will never disappear completely.
And as you were saying, you're doing this drum and bass show about the history of your drum and bass history. Music also provides us with pathways into our past. We can hear a track and remember a certain time of our life, maybe who we were dating at that time, what was happening. So music sort of gives us little connection lines through every sort of point of our life. It's sort of part, it's part. I guess it's part
tapestry,
of.
Isn't it?
It's the tapestry of our past. It gives it the colour and
and also I think people's perceptions of like the whole validation thing, and they rate people who are a supporter of your song you make or your journey in your career. They hold it with such, revere. I think a lot of that is, when you are able to bring a soundtrack to somebody that holds their attention, that takes them out of the norm and puts them into living in the like literally the music does send people in a living in the now state, and that is golden. That puts you in the higher echelon of like you own me for a minute. Do you know what I mean? That's why a lot of artists, pool guys, they have this kind of
I guess they have this sort of ability to bring people in the moment and help them have a peak experience.
And I think that's an endorphin. I think that is what a lot of artists at their core want to achieve. When you've achieved that, like, what the fuck's next? Do you know what I mean?
That's it, so then I think at that point you need to readjust what your goals are and what your direction is, and you need to, what I'm wanting to do now is to try and focus on doing something that's for the greater good. Like, if I can get a really constructive conversation going around these topics, then, and that can percolate amongst people, and we can, collectively try and solve some of the problems, make people aware of potential pitfalls before they get hit by them, and all of that sort of thing. Like, I don't know, I've got a crazy low resolution goal in my head of having some huge warehouse that's got like loads of studios in it, and there's a gym, and there's a restaurant, and then there's like all of this. Well, literally, like, it's, I'm not saying I'm going to start a cult. I'm not saying that, but we will stockpile some weapons, and but to try and aim yourself at doing good, or you want to aim yourself really at doing the highest possible good you can, but you have to decide on what it actually is that you can do and that you will do, and all of those things. Because when you can endure tremendous hardship if it has meaning behind it, but when you feel stuff doesn't have meaning, you can just unravel and just totally fall to pieces.
But I think having conversations like this, people in the music industry sort of admitting they're struggling and admitting they've had low points and admitting they're not always super confident about the music they're making and some of their gigs are crap. That I think that's helpful. I think opening that up, I think that tendency on Facebook and social media for DJs and producers, they'll always show their most packed gigs standing in front of a helicopter or sort of portraying this ultra successful. I think people admitting their vulnerabilities and admitting that we all struggle, I hopefully will make people that are struggling in the music industry feel a bit more connected.
Yeah, man. I believe there's a reset button for like anyone that wants to get into a particular artist. Even I always say podcasts. Every artist should have a podcast. Every artest should have a podcast.
Everyone in general.
Just have a podcast.
Democratises entertainment and learning. doesn't it?
Right.
I don't think my mum should have a podcast.
Well, I don't know. She's got some pretty racy ideas.
But I think it's important to expose your weaknesses and let people come with you on a journey, getting to know more about you as a person and what your tastes are and opinions are. You can't please everybody all the time. You're not gonna, but you don't want to be vanilla. You don't want to be normal. You don't want to be like. So to have a conversation like this is the gold dust. I think You've got a live. We're going to do a live podcast. This is preliminary, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Have you got? Because what we'll do is we'll make sure the flyer will be at the end of the audio and posted on the video as well. Because because in a couple of weeks' time, right? So we'll make sure that we're.
Yeah. So at Hoxton Bar and Grill in Hoxton Square in Shoreditch, they do quarterly themed events called Superculture. They had last year. They had Women of Colour Redefine Wellness. They had Women in Science. This first quarter of 2019 is Male Mental Health, and I think Book of Man are doing a residency there. And
that's Professor Green's team.
Yeah. And I've been asked to do 3 shows, one a month, January, February, and March. And so far, people that are guests that have come on for the panels are you two and Tim Exile, Eddie Temple Morris.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
And and then I still have more to book. I've got a few people in mind. And I'd want to try and... I'm still working out exactly the best way to structure it, because I quite want to try and break it down into 3 parts, but then I'm thinking that probably it will be a different audience for each one. So it's more going to be different people contributing to the same narrative, same sort of line, really, based of, what can go wrong, trying to build community, trying to redefine the meaning in it, and how we can try and collectively go some way towards solving. It's not the right way of putting it, but mitigating some of the potential negative effects of it all.
Sounds good.
So, I don't think we can solve the world in 3 podcasts, but it's worth having a try, isn't it?
Having a go.
Yeah, might do.
Yeah, man.
Don't know if you try.
But, well, look, we'll hold it here because we obviously want people to go and check out.
I want to use all our best
stuff.
stuff.
We don't use all our stuff. And you've got an appointment. You're a busy man today.
I've got a client. Yeah.
The train keeps on rolling, people. So, listen, we're going to leave it there. We're out like Ian was out of fashion. High Rankin. Big shout. Big up yourself.
Cheers, man. Yeah? Thanks for having me in.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I'll see you at the gym tomorrow morning.
God. If I can get out.
Joking mad way.
Doing it. You're all right, Matt. Installing those disciplines.
Let's do some Rogan-style kettlebell work. Yeah. Conquering your inner bitch.
That's right.
Brilliant.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Killa podcast. Stay lucky, stay out of trouble, all right?
Don't let your memes be dreams.
Yeah, I like that. Stay lucky, people.